Today we're going to be talking about points, segments, lines, rays, and angles. So let's go ahead and get started. It's pictured by a dot. It's named with a capital letter. So let's go ahead and call this one A. We use capital A to label this point. Let's go ahead and draw a second point here. And again, a point represented by a dot is named with a capital letter, so we'll call this one B. Let's draw some more points. How about down here? Again, a point is pictured with a dot and labeled with a capital letter, so let's label this one C. And another one, D. Okay? Now, knowing that a point is pictured by a dot and named with a capital letter, you can see here we have 4 points. They're all over the place. So let's look at putting these points on a line. Let's go ahead and draw a line through A and B. There we go. So now we have a point that goes, a line that goes through points A and B. Now, we're going to go ahead and draw arrowheads on the end of this. And what these arrowheads do is they identify that this line is in fact a line, not a line segment, not a ray, not anything else that we're going to talk about, simply a line, meaning that it is a straight path that goes on forever and ever in both directions. That's what these arrowheads mean. You'll see one points one direction and one points the opposite direction, showing that they both go on to infinity in opposing directions. They go through points A and point B, but they do not end or begin with those points. They just go through them and they go on to infinity in both directions. This is the definition of a line. Again, a straight path that goes on forever and ever in both directions. Now, if we wanted to note this line, we would write it as capital A, again, because our points are labeled with a capital letter. So we would call it capital A, capital B, and then the way it's written is you put a short line above it, again with the arrowheads, which denotes it is in fact a line that goes on and on for forever. Now, you've heard me say over and over a line just by itself, that one word, and that is because if we come down here and take a look at points C and D, I'm going to show you the difference. We are going to actually start here with point C, and we're going to connect points C and D. We are going to start with C. Our line segment is going to originate with point C, and it's going to end with point D. A line segment is a straight line or a straight path between 2 points. It begins with one point and ends with another. So the difference you can notice here between line AB and segment CD is the arrowheads on line AB show that it goes on forever and ever, while the point at either end of line segment CD clearly indicate that this segment begins with point C, and we'll make that just a little clearer here. Here's point C, and end with point D. Okay, and again, this is written as C, oops, we still have our line there, C, D, using our capital letters to name our points, and a straight line without arrowheads is written above it. So while we named this line up top AB with our short line above it with our arrowheads, we would name our line segment CD as capital C, capital D, with a short line above it without any arrowheads. That's the difference between line AB and line segment CD. Now, let's take a look at what happens when we have, let's add another point here, and we'll call it point E. And let's take a look at what happens when we have a line that originates with a point, but it doesn't end with another point like our segment. Instead, it's a combination of the two. It originates with a point, but it has the arrowhead at the end, showing that while it starts at one point, it goes on to infinity in the opposite direction. This is a ray. A ray is a straight path that goes on forever in one direction. So let's give this a second point here. Again, our points are labeled with capital letters, so we'll label that F. And we can, again, name this ray, again with our capital letters. We'll name this ray EF, and we'll write above it our line like we did with A, B, and CD, but this time we'll add one arrowhead, indicating that this is ray EF. So up here we have the difference. AB goes on forever in both directions, that's a line. Segment CD begins with point C and ends with point D. And ray EF begins with point E but goes on forever in the opposite direction. Now let's look at some examples of how these are used. If we take a look at our line segments, I want to show you, if I have 3 line segments, here's one, and we'll label it, we had already used C and D, so let's keep with C and D. But let's go ahead and add, here's one segment CD. But what if I add another segment here? And we'll label that G. And then I connect G and D. So now I have 3 line segments. I have segment CD, segment DG, and segment CG. Well, my 3 line segments actually formed a triangle. So I'm not sure if you ever thought about that before, but your triangle is 3, each side is a line segment. 3 sides, 3 line segments. So we could label the 3 sides of our triangle as line segments. We would have CG as one side. We have CD segment as the other side. And we have DG as our third side. So segment CG, segment CD, and segment DG are the 3 sides of our triangle. I'll show you one last thing, and that's our ray. If we take a look at point E, let's look at our ray EF. We had E, okay, we have our point F, and our ray EF goes on forever in one direction. But now let's add a second ray. Let's do E, S. Okay, so now we have ray ES and ray EF. And when we put 2 rays together, and the 2 rays meet here at this point is called the vertex. This 2 rays together have now made an angle. So what is an angle? Well, an angle thinks that some people think it's some sort of slanted line. But in mathematics, an angle is made up of 2 rays that have the same beginning point. And that point is called the vertex. The 2 rays are called the sides of the angle. So as you can see, rays and segments are used all over the place in math. So today we've learned about points, lines, segments, rays, and how they're used in making shapes and angles. So I hope you've enjoyed our math lesson today. Have a great day.